phone buzzed at exactly 2:17 p.m. while I was reviewing an insurance claim involving hail damage. I glanced down, expecting another work email, but instead saw one from my gym. "Great job completing your workout, Daniel." It even listed the machines I'd supposedly used and congratulated me on setting a new personal record on the rowing machine. I laughed, showed it to the co-worker in the next cubicle, and said, "Apparently I figured out how to exercise without leaving my desk." He chuckled, but something about it bothered me. My membership key tag was still clipped inside my wallet, which hadn't left my pocket all day. At first I assumed it was some kind of software glitch. Then it happened again 2 days later. Same time of day, same cheerful email, different equipment. The app showed I'd entered the gym at 12:41 p.m., completed a 53-minute workout, and left just before 2 o'clock. I checked my calendar. I'd been sitting in a meeting with 8 people during that exact period. One of them even remembered I'd complained about the stale coffee. After the 4th fake workout, I stopped by the fitness center after work. The girl at the front desk smiled politely. "Looks like you were here earlier today." I definitely wasn't. She turned her monitor toward me. "Your membership scanned at 12:38. My card never left my wallet." She asked if anyone else had access to my account. No. She called the manager. His name was Greg. Calm, professional, the kind of guy who looked like he'd solved 100 membership problems before lunch. He checked the logs twice. "Our system doesn't show a duplicate card," he said. "It's reading the original tag assigned to your account. Can you cancel it and issue another?" "We can." He handed me a brand new key tag, deactivated the old one in front of me, and wished me a good evening. I thought that was the end of it. The next afternoon, another congratulatory email arrived. This one welcomed me back after my first visit with my new membership tag. I drove straight to the gym. Greg's expression changed the moment he saw me. "You got another one?" I nodded. He looked genuinely unsettled. "That's not possible." He pulled up the access history. The system showed my brand new tag entering the building at 1:06 p.m. It had never left my wallet. Greg finally suggested reviewing the security footage. The camera facing the entrance showed someone approaching the scanner. The image was clear. The scanner flashed green. The screen displayed my name. Then, just as the person stepped into view, the video dissolved into digital blocks. Gray static. A frozen frame. When it resumed 3 seconds later, the doorway was empty. Greg frowned. "We've had cameras here 6 years. I've never seen corruption happen at the exact same spot. We checked 3 different days. Every recording failed at precisely the moment the person's face should have appeared. Everything before and after looked perfectly normal. The gym contacted corporate. Corporate blamed the camera software. The camera company blamed corrupted storage drives. The drives were replaced. Nothing changed. Over the next 2 weeks, I became obsessed with those emails. Sometimes they listed machines I'd never touched. Sometimes they mentioned stretching in rooms I'd never entered. One workout even recorded my heart rate. I didn't own a fitness watch. I stopped sleeping well. Every notification made my stomach tighten. I began checking my wallet every hour, making sure the tag was still there. One Friday morning, I had an idea. The app usually updated within seconds of someone checking in. So I took an early lunch, parked across the street from the gym, and waited. At exactly 12:52, my phone vibrated. "Welcome back, Daniel. Have a great workout." I looked at the entrance. Nobody walked in, at least nobody I could see. I sprinted across the parking lot. The automatic doors slid open. The front desk scanner chirped. "Welcome, Daniel Foster." The employee behind the counter looked confused. "Oh, you're back already? I just got here." She shook her head. "You checked in maybe 30 seconds ago." "No, you walked right past me. I've been sitting in my truck." She stared at me long enough that I wondered if she thought I was joking. Then she looked back at her monitor. "It says you're already inside." Greg hurried over after hearing the conversation. He refreshed the attendance screen. 2 active sessions appeared under my account. Same membership number, same name. One had entered 30 seconds before me. The other was standing at the desk arguing with him. Neither session showed an exit. Greg whispered, "Stay here." Instead, I followed him. We searched the cardio area first. Rows of treadmills hummed beneath bright lights. People jogged with headphones on. Nobody looked familiar. The free weights section echoed with clanking metal. Nothing. Then we reached the stretching studio. The lights inside flickered once. The room was empty. Greg checked his tablet. "It still says you're in here." A cold draft drifted across the floor, even though every vent was overhead. I heard footsteps, not loud, just soft rubber soles moving across polished concrete somewhere beyond the wall. Greg heard them too. He pushed open the storage door beside the studio. It led into a narrow maintenance hallway. No windows, only buzzing fluorescent lights. The footsteps continued ahead of us, always just around the next corner. Never faster, never slower. We rounded the final bend. The hallway ended at an emergency exit. Locked, alarm seal untouched. Nobody there. Yet the footsteps continued for another 3 or 4 seconds beyond the door before fading into silence. Greg slowly looked down at his tablet. One active session remained. Mine. The other had finally checked out. No exit scanner had recorded it. Corporate eventually refunded my membership and deleted my account. A month later, I joined a completely different gym across town. Different company, different app, different key tag. Everything stayed normal for almost a year. Then one Tuesday afternoon, while sitting at my desk miles away from both gyms, my phone buzzed with a familiar subject line. "Great job completing your workout, Daniel. Welcome back." I joined a small independent CrossFit gym because working from home had turned me into someone who barely left the house. The place wasn't fancy, but everyone seemed to know each other. Within my first week, one person stood out. His name tag said Evan. He always wore the same black staff shirt with the gym logo, carried a clipboard, and somehow appeared wherever someone was struggling. He corrected deadlifts, adjusted rowing machines, spotted bench presses, and congratulated people after difficult workouts. Everyone smiled when he walked by. Nobody ever introduced him because it felt unnecessary. He looked like he belonged there more than anyone else. Evan greeted me every evening with the same calm smile. "Marcus, keep your shoulders back." I didn't remember telling him my name. At first, I figured I'd forgotten. Maybe he'd seen it in the gym's computer system. Maybe another coach had mentioned me. It wasn't strange enough to question. Over the next several months, I saw him almost every weekday. He arrived before sunset. He stayed until closing. He never seemed rushed. Unlike the actual coaches, I never saw him leading classes. Instead, he drifted through the gym floor, offering quick advice before disappearing toward another member. People thanked him constantly. "You're getting stronger. Good correction." That fixed my back. He always knew exactly what to say. One evening, I watched him demonstrate a kettlebell movement to a woman near the mirrors. She thanked him and laughed at something he said. 5 minutes later, I asked her, "Is Evan your trainer?" She looked confused. "My trainer? The guy helping you?" She glanced around. "Oh, him." She hesitated. "I don't actually know." Then she shrugged and walked away as if the question had somehow stopped making sense. I didn't think about it again until my friend Tyler wanted to join the gym. "Ask for Evan," I told him. "He's probably the best coach there." The next afternoon, Tyler texted me. "Who's Evan?" I replied. "Tall guy, mid-30s, brown hair, staff shirt." A minute later, he called. I asked the girl at the front desk. She said nobody named Evan works there. I laughed. "Wrong person." "No," Tyler insisted. She checked their employee list. That evening, I walked straight to the front desk. The manager, Lisa, had owned the gym for years. "Quick question," I said. "Is Evan working tonight?" She stared at me politely. "Who's Evan?" "The trainer." "We don't have a trainer named Evan. He wears your staff shirt." Lisa smiled awkwardly. "I think you're mixing us up with another gym." I looked past her. Evan was standing 20 feet away, helping a man adjust a squat rack. I pointed. "Him." Lisa followed my finger. "There isn't anyone there." The man at the squat rack was suddenly lifting alone. I honestly believed I'd looked away for only a second. I searched the building. Locker rooms, office, equipment storage, parking lot, nothing. The next few days I kept expecting to see him again. Instead, I noticed something stranger. Nobody asked where he had gone. Nobody mentioned missing one of the trainers. It was as though an entire person had quietly evaporated without leaving a gap behind. I started paying closer attention to conversations. Who usually helped people with form? I casually asked another member. The coaches? Anyone else? He shook his head. No. I almost argued with him before realizing I couldn't remember seeing that man and Evan speak even once. A week later, the gym celebrated its anniversary by hanging framed photos from previous years across one wall. While everyone admired old competitions, I wandered closer. There he was, standing beside members after a charity workout, smiling in the background of a Halloween costume contest, holding open a door during a holiday party, watching people stretch after class. Different clothes, different hairstyles, same face, every single year, sometimes close enough to touch someone, sometimes only half visible behind a rowing machine. Always present, never the center of attention. I pulled out my phone and snapped pictures of every frame. That night, I enlarged them on my computer. There were 23 photographs. Evan appeared in 14. In one picture taken 6 years before I joined, he was leaning over someone's shoulder, demonstrating proper grip on a barbell. He looked exactly the same age. The following evening, I showed the photos to Lisa. She frowned. I've seen these pictures 100 times. I pointed to the man. Who is that? She leaned closer. For several seconds, she said nothing. Finally, she whispered, I don't know. She called over 2 longtime members. Neither recognized him. One even laughed nervously. I've looked at these photos before. How did I never notice him? Over the next hour, more people gathered. Everyone agreed the same man appeared repeatedly. Nobody remembered meeting him. Nobody remembered learning his name. Nobody remembered speaking to him. Yet several people admitted something unsettling. The more they looked at the pictures, the more they felt certain he'd once corrected their form. One woman insisted she'd thanked him after recovering from a shoulder injury. When asked what he'd actually taught her, she couldn't answer. It was like trying to remember a dream after waking up. A month later, Lisa replaced every framed photo. She never explained why. The old ones disappeared. Eventually, the conversation stopped. New members joined. Life at the gym returned to normal. Last winter, I visited another CrossFit gym, nearly 40 miles away, while traveling for work. On the community bulletin board was a collage from a fundraising competition held years earlier. People were celebrating with medals around their necks. Near the edge of the frame, a man in a black staff shirt was quietly adjusting someone's grip on a kettlebell. His name tag was too blurry to read, but the smile hadn't changed at all. I spend most of my day helping people recover from injuries, so working out after my shift became routine. Around 10:30 every night, I'd head to a newly renovated 24-hour fitness center across town. It was clean, modern, and never very crowded that late. The only thing that never fit the polished look was the very last locker in the men's locker room. It sat by itself at the end of the row, tucked beside a concrete wall, always locked. What caught my attention wasn't the lock. It was the missing number. Every locker had a silver plate, 101, 102, 103, but this one had nothing. I asked the front desk if they skipped a number during renovation. The employee looked confused, glanced toward the hallway, then shrugged. Never noticed. That should have been the end of it. Instead, I started noticing who visited it. The first man arrived close to midnight wearing jeans and a dark jacket instead of gym clothes. He walked straight into the locker room without checking in. I assumed he worked there until I watched him unlock the strange locker with a brass key. He opened the door just wide enough to slip inside, not in front of it, inside. Then he quietly pulled the door shut behind him. I waited. The locker wasn't nearly big enough to hold a grown man. About 4 minutes later, the door opened again. The same man stepped out, locked it, slid the key into his pocket, and walked past me, carrying absolutely nothing. I checked the locker after he left. Locked. The next week, it happened again. Different person, different key, same routine. Nobody stayed longer than 5 minutes. Nobody carried a gym bag, nobody worked out. Each one entered the locker alone and came back looking strangely calm, almost relieved, before leaving through the front entrance. After the 4th time, curiosity got the better of me. I mentioned it to the night manager while buying a protein shake. "The locker with no number," I said. "What's behind it?" He stared at me for a second longer than felt normal. "What locker?" "The one all the way at the end." "There isn't one." I laughed. "There definitely is." He didn't. Instead, he excused himself and disappeared into an office. The following evening, the locker was gone. Not locked. Gone. The entire wall had fresh drywall painted the exact shade of gray as the rest of the room. Even the floor tiles looked newer in that corner, though I knew they hadn't been replaced the day before. I found one of the maintenance guys cleaning mirrors. "What happened to the last locker?" He looked puzzled. "The rooms always ended there." I pointed toward the wall. "There was a locker." "No," he answered. "You're thinking of the old location before renovation." Except I wasn't. I'd changed clothes there nearly every night for 2 months. I asked 3 trainers over the next week. Every one of them insisted there had never been a locker there. Eventually, I convinced myself I'd somehow mixed up another gym. Then something happened that erased that explanation. While stretching near the group fitness room, I noticed an old emergency evacuation map leaning against a trash bin. Someone must have forgotten to throw it away after the remodel. The map showed the previous layout: locker room, sauna, showers. Then, directly behind the wall where the mystery locker had stood, a narrow maintenance corridor. It wasn't labeled for public access. It connected to a small rectangular room with no name, no storage label, no equipment marker, just an empty box hidden inside the building. The current evacuation maps mounted throughout the gym showed nothing behind that wall. I quietly slipped the old map into my backpack. The next night, I brought it back to compare measurements. The dimensions matched perfectly. The hidden corridor should still exist. Walls don't disappear during cosmetic renovations. After my workout, I waited until nearly 1 in the morning. The gym became almost silent except for distant treadmill motors and the occasional clang of weights. Standing in the locker room, I placed my hand against the new wall. It felt colder than the others, not slightly, noticeably. Then I heard something, a metallic click, very faint, behind the drywall. Another click followed by slow footsteps. Someone was walking inside the wall. The steps stopped directly opposite me. Neither of us moved. I could hear quiet breathing through whatever space separated us. Not loud, just enough to know someone else was standing there. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. The vibration broke the silence. The footsteps immediately retreated deeper into the hidden corridor, followed by the sound of a heavy door closing somewhere out of sight. I backed away and left without showering. 2 days later, I returned after work, hoping I'd imagined everything. The old evacuation map had disappeared from my backpack. I hadn't taken it out. I lived alone. Nothing else was missing. At the front desk, I casually asked if they still had copies of the old floor plans from before the renovation. The employee smiled politely. "This building has never been renovated." I almost corrected him. Instead, I looked past his shoulder. Mounted behind the desk was a framed, grand opening photo taken only 8 months earlier. In the picture, the ribbon stretched across the entrance, and at the far edge of the image, barely visible through the open locker room doorway, was the last locker. No number, exactly where I'd remembered it. The frame was gone the next time I visited, and I've never found another copy of that photograph. But every now and then, when the gym falls quiet after midnight, I still catch myself listening for footsteps that shouldn't have enough space to exist behind that wall. I worked 12-hour shifts as an ER nurse, so my morning started long before sunrise. At 4:15 every weekday, I unlocked the fitness center in my apartment complex with my key fob, finished the same 40-minute workout, showered upstairs, and drove straight to the hospital. It was quiet enough to hear the treadmills hum through the walls and the air conditioner click on and off. For almost 2 years, I never saw another person in that gym. Then one morning, the property manager called while I was halfway through my shift and asked, "Rachel, do you have a sister?" I laughed because I don't. He stayed silent for a second before saying, "Then I need you to come by the office after work." He showed me security footage from that morning. At 4:59, I walked out carrying my water bottle. At 5:02, another woman walked in. The video quality wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to make out details. She had my height, my build, dark hair tied in a low ponytail, gray leggings, and a black zip-up jacket. She wasn't identical to me, but from a distance, anyone would have assumed she was. She didn't start exercising. Instead, she walked from machine to machine and changed every setting: the treadmill speed, the incline, the rowing machine resistance, the cable machine weight. She adjusted every piece of equipment until it matched the exact settings I'd used only minutes earlier. Then she completed the same workout I had. Same order, same pace, same breaks. When she left, she glanced directly into the security camera before walking out. "Who is she?" I asked. The manager rubbed his forehead. "That's the problem." He pulled up the access log. Only my key fob had opened the gym that morning. There was no second entry, no second resident. Nothing. He assumed the software had missed a scan, but when he checked other days, the same woman appeared 3 more times that week. Always after me. Always without a recorded entry. He emailed photos to the leasing office staff. Nobody recognized her. A few residents thought she'd recently moved in, but no one could say which building she lived in. The leasing company checked every lease. Nothing. For the next week, I tried ignoring it. Maybe she was slipping in before the door closed. Maybe the cameras made us look more alike than we really were. But then I started noticing small things. The treadmill would already be set to my usual speed before I touched it. A dumbbell I'd left slightly crooked would be perfectly lined up the next morning. Once I accidentally skipped the rowing machine because I was running late. The footage showed the woman walking to it, staring at the untouched handle for nearly 30 seconds, then quietly moving on. She seemed disappointed. The manager suggested changing my routine. If she's copying you, let's see what happens. So on Monday, I started with free weights instead of cardio. I used machines I'd never touched before. I changed every setting randomly. When we watched the recording later, she arrived 3 minutes after I left. She repeated every change exactly. She even stretched in the awkward corner I'd chosen only because the mirrors weren't there. I remember feeling more confused than frightened. It was strange, deeply strange. But someone copying workouts wasn't exactly a police matter. Then I decided to make the biggest change possible. Instead of working out before dawn, I went at 8:30 that night after my shift. I told no one, not even my coworkers. The gym was busier than usual, so I improvised everything. Different machines, different order, different duration. I figured whoever she'd been, she'd show up the next morning expecting the old schedule. The manager called me before I got home. "You need to see tonight's footage." She hadn't arrived the next morning. She arrived at 9:14 p.m., 4 minutes after I left. She completed my brand new routine. Every exercise, every adjustment, every pause, even though I'd never done that routine before. The office checked every camera covering the parking lot, elevators, and entrances. She never appeared entering the building. She only appeared inside the fitness center. I stopped going altogether. I joined a gym 20 minutes away and never used my apartment facility again. Months passed. Nothing happened. The anxiety slowly faded. Then one afternoon, my neighbor knocked on my door holding a package that had been left outside by mistake. Before handing it over, she smiled and said, "I think I saw you working out this morning." "I wasn't home," I answered. She frowned. "Really?" "Around 5, black jacket, gray leggings, ponytail, the same outfit." I looked toward the fitness center from my balcony. Its windows reflected the orange sunrise so brightly I couldn't see inside. Management reviewed the cameras. No one was there. No entry, no exit, just an empty gym. The manager resigned a few weeks later. The leasing office replaced the entire camera system and electronic locks. They told residents the upgrade fixed technical inconsistencies. I moved out before my lease ended. I've worked at 2 different hospitals since then, and my schedule changes constantly. I never follow the same workout plan twice. Sometimes I switch gyms halfway through a session, just to convince myself no one could predict where I'll go next. Last winter, while cleaning out old emails, I found the manager's final message before he left. Attached was one last still frame from the security system. He'd zoomed in on the woman as she adjusted the treadmill. Written across the bottom was the camera timestamp, 4:11 a.m., 4 minutes before I had entered the building.